Dr. Patel didn't lower his voice. He pulled my chart folder closer, thumb on a yellow tab, and said, "Don't go home tonight." I laughed once dry, automatic because I thought he meant my blood pressure. Then he tapped one line on the screen and added, "Not until we figure out why your husband is listed as an authorized editor." The word husband sat there like a typo that could kill me. Behind the curtain, the waiting room TV kept playing ads, and someone coughed into a paper mask. Patel's eyes didn't blink. "Maya," he said, "this note wasn't written by clinical staff." Dr. Patel tapped my chart. "Don't go home." I stared at the monitor like it could correct him. The green line kept hopping. The cuff on my arm kept squeezing. My discharge papers were already printed in a plastic sleeve at the foot of the bed. "Authorized editor," I repeated. My mouth tasted like the chalky chewable they'd given me. "That's a patient portal thing?" "It's a system thing," he said. His finger stayed on the screen. "Control, and it shouldn't be your husband. Evan, 35. Hospital IT contractor. The kind of man who could charm a security guard into holding a door. The kind of man who always knew where his badge was. I worked billing, codes, denials, payment plans, paperwork that could ruin someone quietly. I knew what authorized looked like when it was real ink, initials, dates, not a line inside a chart at 1:58 a.m. "Are you saying he changed my record?" I asked. Dr. Patel lifted his eyes from the screen to my face. "I'm saying your record shows an edit trail." Edit trail. 2 words that felt colder than the IV tape on my wrist. I sat up and the hospital bracelet bit my skin. I pressed my thumb against the ridged plastic like I could erase my own name. Tasha, the triage nurse, pushed the curtain aside with her hip. She had a clipboard tucked under her elbow, and that look nurses get when the waiting room is full and somebody is asking for a sandwich. "Dr. Patel, bed 12 needs discharge. Family's asking questions," she said, loud enough for the hall to hear. "I'm with her," he said. "Control again." Tasha's eyes flicked to me, then to the chart, then away. She didn't smile. She didn't apologize. She just tightened her grip on the clipboard and let the curtain fall back into place. "Doctor." Patel lowered his voice half an inch. "Do you have somewhere else you can go?" "My sister's couch is 40 minutes, I said. "I've got work at 8. "Call in," he said. Flat, not advice and instruction. "Do not go home." My discharge papers said stable. My chart said Evan H. He picked up the chart folder, then set it down again like it weighed too much. The yellow tab fluttered. My eyes snagged on a different color tucked under it, a red folder tab, just a sliver, like someone had tagged me for later. "What is that?" I nodded at the red. He covered it with his hand. "Control. Not for you right now." I should have argued. I should have demanded a supervisor. Instead, I reached for my phone on the thin blanket, and my screen lit up with 2% battery. Evan's name was already there in a text bubble. "You okay? Call me." My thumb hovered over the reply field. My habit was to explain first, then feel later. I typed "still here" and erased it. I typed "discharge soon" and erased that too. My hands shook in tiny bursts, like my body was trying to cough out the fear. "Did you tell him you were here?" Dr. Patel asked. "Yes," I said, because lying would take breath I didn't have. "Then listen to me," he said, and his tone shifted from doctor to rulebook. "If you go home, you put yourself at risk, and you contaminate the evidence." Evidence. My stomach dropped. In my head, I saw a spreadsheet, a timestamp column, a login ID. I saw my own employee number getting highlighted in bright yellow. Dr. Patel turned toward the computer and clicked through screens fast. The room filled with the soft tapping of keys and the distant beep of someone else's monitor. My eyes kept sliding to the door. The hallway was bright, too bright for nearly 2 a.m. He printed something. The printer's motor whined, then stopped. He tore off a page and folded it once, then twice, quick and practiced. He didn't hand it to me right away. He held it near his palm like it was hot. "I can't give you access logs," he said. "Evade. But I can document what I saw." He slid the folded paper under my discharge packet, right where my fingers would land when I stood. Object and action. No explanation. Just a quiet transfer. Tasha knocked once on the frame and called through the curtain, "We need that bed, Doc." "I'm done, Dr. Prapis," Patel called back. He looked at me again, softer this time but still rigid around the eyes. "If your husband shows up here, do not speak to him alone," he said. "Ask for security." My mouth went dry. "Will you put that in my chart?" He hesitated, then nodded once. Control turning into a promise. I swung my legs off the bed. The floor was cold. I shoved my feet into my sneakers and the laces snagged on the plastic bracelet. I yanked it free, annoyed at the stupid little pain. At the nurse's station, someone stamped my parking validation ticket $4 for the first hour, then a blank space that made my throat tighten. I tucked it into my wallet like a receipt I'd regret. In the elevator mirror, I looked pale and oddly calm. I checked the time twice, 2:06, then again like the numbers could prove I wasn't imagining any of it. In the lobby, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Evan. I'm outside. Which entrance? Cliffhanger. When I unfolded Dr. Patel's paper, one line showed 2:14 a.m. EV, before the ink blurred. The air in the parking garage tasted like exhaust and old rain. I slid into my car and locked the doors so fast my fingers fumbled the key fob. 1 click, 2 clicks. The second one was for my nerves, not the locks. I reclined the seat until the concrete ceiling filled my windshield. My discharge packet sat on my lap like homework I didn't remember assigning myself. The folded paper doctor? Patel had tucked underneath, it was still warm from his hand. My phone buzzed again. Evan, I'm outside. Which entrance? I stared at his name until the letters stopped looking like a person and started looking like a label. 2% battery. No charger in my purse, of course. Evan always handled the car stuff. He'd fixed my cigarette lighter port last month after it stopped working. I'd thanked him like he'd done me a favor instead of taking something else I didn't realize I'd surrendered. I opened the discharge packet with shaking thumbs. Not because I thought it would explain anything, but because my hands needed something to do. Stable. Follow up with PCP. Return if worse. Nothing about the fact that my husband's name had just appeared in my medical record like a fingerprint. I pulled out Dr. Patel's folded paper and opened it carefully, like it might trigger an alarm. It was a printout cropped, not a full page. A thin strip of a system log, maybe. Most of the ink looked like it had been dragged by a damp hand or a cheap toner cartridge. But one line was darker than the rest, and my eyes locked on it like it had teeth. 2:14 That was it. The rest blurred into gray. I swallowed hard. My pulse thumped in my throat, loud in the quiet of the garage. I checked the time on my phone. 2:08. I checked it again. 2:08. My brain wanted timestamps the way other people wanted prayer. A shape moved at the garage entrance, headlights sweeping across concrete pillars. My body went instantly still. I didn't know if it was him. I didn't know if he'd brought anyone. I didn't know if he'd already been in the hospital and left. All I knew was what Dr. Patel had said you contaminate the evidence, and how my husband's name had sat on the screen like a typo that could kill me. My phone buzzed again. Evan. Maya? I'm worried. Answer me. The word worried made something inside me go cold. Evan used that word when he wanted control to sound like care. I'm worried was his soft leash. I didn't text back. Instead, I hit his contact and called Lena. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and then her voice came through, half asleep and instantly sharp. Maya? I'm at County, I whispered, even though nobody was in my car. Even though the garage echoed and didn't need help amplifying panic. ER. It's not about my blood pressure. What's wrong? Not a question, really. A command. I looked down at the paper again. My thumbs smeared the blur. Dr. Patel told me not to go home, I said. And then he said, Evan is listed as an authorized editor on my chart. Silence. Not sleepy, silence processing silence. That's not normal, Lena said finally. I know. My voice came out too thin. He printed this. It's like a log line. It's smeared, but it says 02:14 a.m. EV. Do not lose that, she said immediately. Take a picture, right now. My phone's dying. Picture anyway, she said. If it shuts off, at least you captured it. My hands shook so hard the camera app took forever to focus. The garage lights were the wrong color, everything yellowed, everything sick. I angled the paper under the dome light and snapped 3 photos in a row. The last one saved, and then my screen dimmed like it was giving up. Okay, I breathed. I got it. Where are you? Lena asked. Parking garage. I'm in my car. Good. Stay in the car, she said. Doors locked. They are. Did he show up? I glanced toward the entrance again. The headlights had moved deeper into the garage. Slow. Searching. He texted that he's outside, I said, asking which entrance. Would have a greaseman in. Do not answer, Lena said. Do not let him know your location. My chest tightened. If he's already here. If he's here, you do not go home, she cut in. You go somewhere public, somewhere with cameras and witnesses, and you call security if he approaches you. Security. Dr. Patel had said the same word. It wasn't comforting. It was a line drawn in permanent marker. I have work at 8, I said automatically, because my brain clung to routine when it was drowning. You call in, Lena said, and her tone softened a fraction, like she realized she just sounded like a doctor too. Maya, listen. If his name is tied to your chart, this is bigger than marital drama. This is systems, access, records, paper, the thing I trusted. I looked at the discharge packet on my lap, then at the folded printout, then at my wallet where the parking validation ticket was tucked like a tiny stamped lie. How do I not mess this up? I whispered. You stop moving like his wife, Lena said. You move like a witness. Headlights swung again closer, this time washing my windshield in white. My breath snagged. My battery is, I started. I'm texting you an address, Lena said quickly. A motel by the highway. Bright, busy, front desk staffed all night. You can pay with your card and park under a light. Do not go to your sister's. Do not go home. My phone buzzed with her text the second she sent it, like fate was rushing. Then another buzz came in immediately after. Evan, found your car. The screen went black. I sat there in the dark, my reflection faint in the rearview mirror, and somewhere behind me a car door shut with a solid, deliberate sound. I don't remember deciding to move. 1 second, I was sitting in a dead black car, my phone a useless slab in my hand, Evan's last text still burning behind my eyelids. Found your car, and the next I was starting the engine on muscle memory and backing out like my life depended on staying quiet. Because it did. I didn't look over my shoulder when I heard the door shut behind me. I didn't roll down a window to say his name. I didn't do any of the things a wife is trained to do, explain, soothe, negotiate. I drove. I drove out of the garage so fast I clipped a painted line and felt the tire bump. At the exit gate, my parking ticket flashed in my mind, stamp, blank space, the way it had felt like a receipt I'd regret. I shoved the ticket into the machine with hands that couldn't decide between trembling and rage. The gate lifted like it didn't know it was part of a crime scene. On the highway, my dashboard clock read 2:23. I checked it again, 2:23. The habit wasn't calming anymore. It was anchoring. Lena's motel address was still on my dead phone. I remembered it the way you remember a panic prayer. Exit 12, blue sign, front desk open. By the time I pulled into the lot, dawn hadn't arrived yet, but the parking lamps were brutal and bright, and the front office windows were lit like an aquarium. I parked under the closest light and sat there for a full minute, staring at the glass doors, forcing my breathing into something that looked normal from the outside. A couple walked past my hood carrying a soda cup and a bag of chips, laughing at something small. They didn't glance at me. They didn't know my husband might be 2 exits behind, or that my medical record had become a battlefield. At the front desk, I paid with my card and signed my name with a pen that felt too heavy. The clerk slid a keycard across the counter like this was just another Tuesday. Rooms on the first floor, he said. Ice machines around the corner. Thanks, I managed. In the room, I plugged my phone into the wall and watched the battery icon appear like a pulse returning. 1%. Then 2%. Then it took its sweet time at 3 as if to punish me for trusting it. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed in my jeans and scrolled my messages with a finger that kept slipping. Evan found your car. Evan, why are you doing this? If you're scared, I can come get you. Come get me. Like I was a child he'd misplaced. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted Lena while my phone still had breath. I got away. Motel. Phone died. He found my car. Lena. Good. Don't go home. Go to work early. Pull what you can. Screenshot everything. My stomach turned. Work. The place where I knew the systems. The place where my login was a key until someone decided it wasn't. At 6:41 a.m., I showered fast, water too hot, and dressed in the same clothes because my overnight bag was basically a toothbrush and panic. The motel receipt sat on the dresser, the date printed in crisp black like proof I existed somewhere other than my apartment. Before I left, I checked my phone time twice. 7:06. Again, 7-6. On the drive to the billing office, my hands felt steadier on the steering wheel than they should have. That scared me more than shaking. Steady hands meant my body was adapting. In the parking lot outside my building, I sat for a second and watched the front doors like they might swing open and let my life out. Then I went in. The billing department smelled like stale coffee and disinfectant wipes. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead with that early morning cruelty too bright, too honest. Someone had brought donuts and left them on the counter in an open box, already drying at the edges. "Morning, Maya," a coworker called without looking up. "Morning," I answered, and my voice sounded normal enough to fool her. I logged into my computer with the password Evan used to tease me about too long, too paranoid. The screen loaded. My email popped up. Then a red banner slammed across the top like a slap. "Access review required. Account temporarily limited." I stared at it until my eyes went watery. My stomach did that sinking elevator thing again. Not fear. Not yet. Something colder. I clicked. A dialog box opened. Policy language. Compliance language. Words like unauthorized, audit, pending investigation. And then, in smaller text, almost casual, incident, patient record edit trail MRN. I didn't know my own MRN by heart. Most people don't. But I knew the shape of the number on my discharge papers. I pulled the packet out of my bag and compared the digits like I was matching fingerprints. It was me. My phone vibrated. An unknown hospital extension. I answered on the first ring because my life had turned into answering on the first ring. "This is Dr. Patel," a clipped voice said. "No hello, no warmth. Rulebook first." My throat tightened. "Doctor." "I documented what I saw," he said. "Compliance has been notified. You need to understand something. You are not the accused in my note. Your chart is the object. Object. Like I was evidence on a table. "I'm limited out of my account," I whispered. "That's standard," he said, and I could hear typing on his end keys like teeth. "Do you still have the printout?" "Yes." "Keep it. Do not show it to anyone except legal counsel or compliance," he said. "And do not go home." There it was again, the phrase that had stopped being advice and started being offense. "Why is his name there?" I asked, and my voice cracked on his. There was a pause, a breath, a choice. "Because there is an edit trail tied to contractor credentials," he said, "and the name attached to those credentials is your husband." My chest went tight, but my brain snapped into a shape I recognized. Columns, timestamps, access IDs. "When?" I asked. "I can't read it to you," he said. "Evade, but your screenshot if it shows a time save it." "It says 02:14 a.m. EV, I said. "Then that matters," he said. "Maya, listen. This isn't about your blood pressure. This is about access." The line went dead. I sat there staring at my screen until the red banner blurred into a single strip of color. Then I did the one thing I always did when the world stopped making sense. I hunted for paper. I opened the internal incident portal, something we used when a claim got flagged, when a payment plan looked wrong, when a chart had a coding discrepancy. My hands moved fast. My eyes moved faster. The system wouldn't let me pull full logs. Of course it wouldn't. But it showed a preview line, one line before the permissions wall snapped down. 214 editor. Yvonne H. device. EVANIT07. I didn't breathe. I took a screenshot so hard my fingers cramped. Then I hit print. The printer whirred, spat out a page. And the same thing happened as Dr. Patel's strip. Most of it came out faint, like someone had dragged a wet thumb through the ink. Only one line was dark enough to read without squinting. Twee veertien Avon ha. My vision tunneled. I heard my own heartbeat, but I also heard something else, footsteps behind me. A chair scooting, a voice pitching just a little too high. "Maya," my supervisor said, "compliance is on the line for you." I turned slowly, paper in my hand like a weapon I didn't know how to swing. On my screen, the red banner stayed bright and unapologetic. And on the desk phone, the line blinked like a countdown. The desk phone blinked like it was counting down to something. My supervisor, Karen, cardigan, perpetual peppermint, held the receiver away from her ear like it was already trouble. "They said it's compliance," she told me, voice pitched too high. "They need you now." The paper in my hand felt suddenly loud. I slid it face down on my keyboard like it could be accused of something too. I picked up the receiver. "This is Maya," a man answered, calm in the way policies are calm. Miss Rivera, this is Mr. Hollis with Hospital Compliance. I'm requesting you report to Clinic Wing B, second floor, Conference Room 2. Immediately. My mouth went dry. I'm in billing. Yes, he said. Like that was the point. You're also the subject of an incident review. Subject. Not accused, not cleared, just pinned in place by a word. Can we do this by phone? I asked, because I could still pretend I had control if I made options appear. No, he said, and because your access is temporarily limited, you'll be escorted. It's gotta tell anorected. Karen's eyebrows shot up. She mouthed, escorted? I looked at the time on my monitor. 8:12. I looked again. 8:12. My brain took the same measurement twice, like it could stabilize the room. Who's escorting me? I asked. Security will meet you at the clinic corridor, Mr. Hollis said. Bring your ID and any documentation you currently possess. Documentation. Paper. The thing I trusted. I hung up with my hand still shaking, even though my voice had sounded steady. Karen already had her lips pressed tight. What is this about? She asked. I don't know, I said, which was true and not true at the same time. Karen didn't argue. She didn't offer sympathy. She just did what supervisors do when a fire starts in someone else's cubicle. I'll walk you, she said. Just keep your head down. We moved through the building like we were late for something I didn't want to attend. The corridor from admin into the clinic wing smelled different hand sanitizer and warm plastic, like the air had been wiped down, glass doors, badge scanners, people waiting in chairs with coats still on, eyes glued to phones, half-asleep kids swinging legs. At the clinic corridor entrance, a security guard stood with his hands folded in front of his belt, not aggressive, just present, like a locked door with a face. Miss Rivera? He asked. Yes. He checked a clipboard. Of course he had a clipboard. You'll come with me. Karen stopped short. I'm her supervisor. He didn't look at her. Compliance requested security only. Karen's face tightened. She stepped back like she'd hit an invisible boundary line and decided not to cross it. My tote strap cut into my shoulder. I adjusted it, reflexive, protective. As we walked, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't pull it out. I didn't need to. My body already knew the shape of Evan's interruptions. The waiting area widened near triage, where the hallway opened into a glassed-in window, the same place people learned bad news and tried to pretend they weren't listening to everyone else's. And there was Tasha. She leaned on the counter, clipboard tucked under her elbow, hair pulled tight, eyes sharp like she'd been awake for 3 nights straight. She saw me and didn't soften. She didn't nod. Her gaze flicked to my tote, then back up like she'd made a decision. Behind her, standing a few feet back, was Dr. Patel. No white coat glow, no bedside gentleness. He looked like he'd already filed the version of me he believed in, not fragile, not dramatic, just involved. And beside them, a man in a gray button-down with a badge clip that read Compliance stood with a folder. A red tab peeked out from the top, the exact sliver I'd seen last night, like my brain had been tagged for later and now later had arrived. The security guard slowed. So did I. Tasha's voice lifted, the way voices do when they want witnesses. She stole access logs, check her bag before she bolts. The words snapped through the corridor. A woman in a waiting chair looked up. A man holding a toddler paused mid-bounce. Someone behind me coughed into a mask and didn't bother turning away. The whole space tilted, just slightly, toward me. Heat crawled up my neck. Not embarrassment, something sharper. The feeling of being stamped with an accusation in front of people who didn't know me and didn't need to. I saw Dr. Patel's jaw tighten. He didn't correct her. He didn't back her up. He just looked at me like he was watching how I handled pressure. The compliance man, Hollis, I assumed, lifted his brows like he'd just watched something inconvenient happen in public. My hands went cold. My tote strap felt suddenly heavy, like it might be evidence and not a bag. I took one step forward. Then I stopped. I turned my head just enough so my voice would carry calm, not loud, the way a document is calm. Say it once more. On record. 6 words. A boundary. A dare. The corridor went quiet in a way that made the fluorescent hum feel louder. The security guard shifted his weight. Hollis's eyes sharpened. Tasha's mouth opened, then shut again like she'd hit a wall she didn't expect. Dr. Patel finally moved. One step toward the window, a small angle of his body that said, "Not here." "Tasha," he said, clipped, "not in public." She scoffed, but her eyes slid away. The waiting room had heard enough. That was the point. Hollis cleared his throat and stepped closer, folder held against his chest. Red tab visible now, unapologetic. "Miss Rivera," he said. "Professional, flat. We're going to conduct an initial interview. This is an administrative matter." "Then stop making it a spectacle," I said before I could stop myself. Hollis didn't react. He pulled a stapled notice from the folder and held it out. The top line was bolded, sterile. Subject, unauthorized chart edit MRN. My own stomach dropped at my own number. Underneath that, an interview time, a room number, a list of policies I'd seen 100 times in trainings and never thought would be pointed at me like a weapon. I took the paper with 2 fingers, like it might smear. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. Persistent, insistent. I didn't need to see the screen to hear Evan's voice behind the vibration. "Why are you doing this?" Hollis's gaze flicked to my tote. "For the record," he said, "you will place your bag on the table when we enter the room." Tasha's eyes flashed victory for a split second. And Dr. Patel looked at me once, quick, like a warning without words, because if they searched my bag, they'd find Dr. Patel's strip. The blurred line, the only dark ink that still said the truth. 2:14 even, huh? And then the corridor doors clicked open. "Right this way," the security guard said. I stepped forward, paper in one hand, evidence in the other, walking into a room where my husband's name had already arrived before I did. The compliance conference room was colder than it needed to be, like somebody believed discomfort made people honest. Mr. Hollis sat at the end of the table with that red-tabbed folder in front of him. The security guard stayed by the door, hands folded, not looking at me but not looking either. Dr. Patel didn't come in. He'd drawn his line in the corridor and left me to the procedure. "Miss Rivera," Hollis said, clicking a pen once, "this is an initial administrative intake, not a disciplinary hearing. You are required to cooperate." My throat tightened around the word required. He slid a single sheet toward me, policy acknowledgments, confidentiality, non-retaliation language. Familiar enough to feel like betrayal. "Place your bag on the table," he said again. I did it slowly. I unhooked my tote from my shoulder and set it down like I was placing an animal in a cage. My fingers found the edge of my wallet inside the side pocket, thick with the parking validation ticket, the motel receipt, and the folded strip doctor. Patel had given me tucked behind them. I'd moved it there while I walked down the corridor, pure instinct. Hollis watched my hands. "Do you have any documents in your possession related to this incident?" "Yes," I said, "a notice you just handed me, and my discharge packet." "Any access logs?" I kept my face blank. "No." It wasn't even a lie. It was a technical truth. A strip of smeared ink wasn't a log. It was a warning. Hollis nodded like he'd filed that answer. "We will be scheduling a formal interview later today with a compliance investigator and IT audit present. You may have counsel." "Demas Klein." "Good," I said, because the word counsel made me feel like I had a spine again. He flipped open his folder. The red tab flashed, the same sliver Dr. Patel had covered last night, and my stomach did that drop again like my body remembered the color before my mind did. "Until then," Hollis continued, "your system access remains restricted. You are not to contact any staff involved, discuss the incident on hospital property, or attempt to access audit tools." Aksha stirred. "Am I being accused of something?" I asked. Hollis held my gaze. "Your name is associated with an edit trail. That is the current fact set." Fact set. Like my life was a spreadsheet. I nodded once, slow. "Then I'd like a copy of everything you're referencing." "You'll receive an email," he said. "Subject line will include your MRN. Your interview time will be included. Do you have a safe contact email?" "Safe." My mouth went dry again. "My personal." He wrote it down without blinking. When I left the room, security escorting me back into the corridor like a package, my skin still felt hot from the waiting room eyes. The humiliation clung to me like smoke. I wanted to scrub it off. Instead, I kept moving. Outside, in the parking lot under a single streetlight that made everything look a shade too pale, I sat in my car and checked the time twice. Jodanling Sifen. Again, 9:04. My phone buzzed as if it had been holding its breath for this. Email compliance, unauthorized chart edit MRN. I opened it with my thumb hovering like it might bite. There it was in black and white: interview time, room number, a line about temporary access limitation, a list of policy sections, and the phrase that made my eyes sting: contractor credentials under review. No name yet, just the outline of one. A second notification popped up: bank alert. Not a huge withdrawal, not the kind that makes you scream, the kind that makes you doubt your own memory. $187.43 transferred to health plan. My stomach tightened. I didn't remember authorizing anything. I didn't remember signing anything. I handled billing codes for a living. I knew what consent looked like. I refreshed. Another small transfer from 2 days ago, another from last week, like someone had been siphoning me in teaspoons. My phone rang. Marcy, my mother-in-law. I stared at her name until it stopped being just letters and became a threat. I answered anyway, because part of me still believed if I played nice, the world stayed orderly. Maya, Marcy said, and her voice had that polished calm that meant she'd already chosen her side. Evan says you're causing a scene. My jaw clenched. I'm at work. You were in the clinic corridor, she said. People talk. Do you understand what you're doing to this family's reputation? There it was. Reputation. The thing she valued like oxygen. I was accused of stealing, I said, and my voice came out flatter than I expected. In public. A pause, not shock. Calculation. Well, Marcy said finally, if you didn't do anything wrong, you shouldn't have anything to worry about. My fingers curled around the steering wheel. That's not how systems work. Marcy's sigh was theatrical. Don't make Evan the villain because you're stressed. He's been nothing but supportive. Expect a day. My phone buzzed again, voicemail. From Evan. I didn't play it. I didn't need his voice in my head right then. I'm not going home, I said to Marcy, the words tasting like metal. You're his wife, she snapped, the polish cracking. You don't get to just... I do, I said quiet. I do. Silence. Then Marcy lowered her voice into something sharp. If you embarrass him publicly, Maya, you will regret it. I ended the call before my hands started shaking again. I drove to Lena's place with my shoulders tight and my eyes scanning mirrors like the world had changed lanes without telling me. When I pulled into her apartment lot, I parked under the brightest light, the one that made hiding impossible. Lena opened the door before I knocked. She had a legal pad in one hand and a highlighter in the other, like she'd been born holding them. You look like you're carrying a fire, she said. I might be, I whispered. At her kitchen table, she set my discharge packet beside her laptop and clicked open the compliance email on my phone. Print it, she said immediately. We build a packet. We don't hold this in our heads. Her printer whirred. Pages slid out, subject line bold at the top, time-stamped, room number, policy references, evidence that existed outside my body. While it printed, I finally opened Evan's voicemail. His voice filled the kitchen, warm and wrong. Hey, babe. I heard you're at the hospital. Compliance called me just routine. Don't freak out. I can handle this. Handle this. Like I was the problem, and the solution was him. Lena's eyes flicked to me. He just admitted they called him, she said, low. That's not routine. That's involvement. My hands were steady when I pulled everything out of my tote motel receipt, parking ticket, discharge papers, and then something small slid onto the table with a soft plastic tap. A red folder tab. Just the tab, not the folder. Like it had been torn off and forgotten. Like it had hitched a ride with me. I stared at it, my skin prickling. Lena leaned in. Where did that come from? I don't know, I whispered. But I saw it last night. In my chart folder. Dr. Patel covered it. Lena didn't touch it. She just looked at it like it was a clue that could turn into a weapon. Okay, she said, voice steady now. We don't go home. We go to that interview. And we make them say everything on record. I checked the time on her stove clock twice without meaning to. Shurdan Shatsifan. Again, 10:17. Lena tapped her highlighter against the legal pad. Paper first, she said. Feelings later. And outside her kitchen window, the daylight looked normal, like it didn't know my husband's name had already started rewriting my life. By the time Lena and I got back to the hospital, the day had shifted into that ugly in-between, too bright outside, too fluorescent inside. The clinic wing smelled like lemon disinfectant and impatience. We checked in at a desk that had a sign about patient privacy in cheerful font, like irony was a service they provided. A man in a gray button-down Hollis met us with the same red-tabbed folder. This time he didn't perform politeness for the hallway. "Counsel?" he asked, looking at Lena. "Paralegal," Lena corrected, "but she's not going in alone." Hollis's jaw flexed once, then he nodded like he'd decided not to fight that battle today. Conference room 2 looked exactly like it had in my nightmares. Cheap clock ticking too loud, a pitcher of water no one trusted, a stack of forms that could turn a person into a case file. A ring of dried water stains on the table made it clear other people had sat here and sweated through their own versions of the end. "Place any belongings on the table," Hollis said. I set my tote down. Careful. My fingers brushed the red folder tab in my side pocket, the little piece of plastic that had shown up like a hitchhiker. I didn't take it out. Not yet. Hollis sat. Another person sat beside him, a woman with a laptop and an ID badge that read, IT Audit. She didn't introduce herself. She just opened her computer like she'd been waiting for my name to appear. "This is recorded," Hollis said, tapping the small device in the middle of the table. "Administrative record only." Lena's voice was calm. "We want a copy of anything you reference." Hollis's expression didn't change. "You'll receive relevant documentation after." "On record," Lena said, and smiled without warmth. Hollis exhaled through his nose. "Noted." He slid a single page toward me. At the top, Ethics and Privacy Incident Receipt. A receipt number sat in bold, EP241187. My stomach turned. It was too neat, too official, like a ticket you couldn't argue with. "What is this?" I asked. Hollis folded his hands. "This receipt acknowledges an incident opened for unauthorized access and modification of patient records associated with your MRN." Associated, the word that kept me suspended between innocent and guilty. I checked the clock twice without meaning to. Shahid and Sensharfen. Again, 11:32. The IT audit woman clicked. A screen turned toward us. Lines, columns, timestamps. Exactly what my brain feared and craved. "Let's establish facts," Hollis said. "At 2:14 a.m., an edit was made to your chart. That edit did not originate from clinical staff." My throat tightened. "Dr. Patel said that." Hollis continued like I hadn't spoken. "Following that, we reviewed system access activity tied to your employee identifier." My skin went cold. The IT audit woman highlighted a block of entries. 17 lines. 17 patient record IDs. All within a narrow window. All stamped with the same device name I'd seen in the preview line. Evan Itnolzaven. I leaned forward so fast my chair squeaked. "That device," I started, "is registered to a contractor profile assigned to Evan H., Hollis said, like he'd been saving the name for maximum damage. "Your husband." The room didn't spin. It didn't go hazy. It got sharp. Because now, it wasn't just my chart. It was a pattern. 17 charts. 17 chances to make it look like I was the kind of employee who looked up records for fun. The kind of employee who deserved to be fired, charged. Lena's voice cut clean through it. "How is my client's identifier tied to his contractor device?" The IT audit woman finally spoke. "Credential reuse, saved login, remote session." She said it like the options were interchangeable, like my marriage had been reduced to a menu of security failures. I swallowed hard. "I don't give him my password." Lena didn't look at me. She looked at Hollis. "But he had access." Hollis nodded once. "We also traced the IP address for the session." He gestured. The IT audit woman pulled up a map-like display with numbers that meant nothing to most people and everything to me. "Originating from a residential router registered to your home address," she said. I felt something inside me detach. Home address. Evan didn't just follow me into systems. He followed me into place. I heard Dr. Patel's voice in my head like a siren. "Don't go home." It wasn't about my blood pressure. It was about the fact that my house had become the source of the crime. Hollis slid another page toward Lena. "Additionally, we received an authorization form submitted last month to expand approved editors and emergency access contacts for your patient portal." Lena didn't touch it. "Submitted by whom?" Hollis didn't blink. "Your signature is on it." "It's ComsDead." My pulse slammed hard enough to make my ears ring. "That's not my signature." The words came out flat. Not emotional, just true. Hollis's tone stayed procedural. "Whether you signed it or not is part of the investigation." Lena pulled her own packet from her bag, the one we'd built at her kitchen table. She placed it on the conference table with controlled force. "I'm going to read something into the record," she said. Hollis's eyes narrowed. This is administrative. On record, Lena repeated, and then she looked at me. Maya, your marriage paperwork. The clause we discussed. My breath hitched. The prenup Evan had called boring. The document I'd signed because he'd said, it's just protection. It's normal. Lena flipped to a page with a highlighted paragraph. Clause 7B, she said, voice clear. Support voided in the event of for-cause termination related to fraud, theft, or breach of confidentiality. Actually resided. The IT audit woman's fingers paused over her keyboard. Hollis didn't react, but something shifted in his eyes' recognition. The shape of motive. I sat very still, because suddenly the whole thing lined up in my head like a clean spreadsheet. Edit my chart. Trigger compliance. Tie it to my identifier. Make it look like I committed a privacy breach. Get me fired for cause. Void support. Control the narrative. Control me. I reached into my tote and pulled out the red folder tab. I set it on the table between us. Hollis's gaze snapped to it like he recognized it before he wanted to. Where did you get that? He asked. I saw it in my chart folder last night, I said, keeping my voice calm on purpose. Dr. Patel covered it. The IT audit woman's eyes narrowed. She leaned in and turned it over. A printed label was stuck to the back. Not my name. My employee ID number. My skin went ice cold. Lena's voice went lower. So you tagged her. Hollis's mouth tightened. That label is internal, which means someone inside your process prepared this, Lena said, before she ever walked in here. I looked at Hollis, then at the IT audit woman, then at the recording device on the table, and I said the only sentence that felt like a lifeline. Tell me who accessed my record first. Hollis held my gaze for a beat too long. Then he said, carefully, this matter may be referred to law enforcement. End quote. Sinclair J. End quote. My phone buzzed on the table, one notification, silent but insistent. Doorbell cam. Motion detected. Lena's eyes flicked to the screen. My blood went cold all over again, because whatever was happening in this room had already moved to my front door. The notification sat on my screen like a blink you couldn't unsee. Doorbell cam. Motion detected. My hands didn't shake this time. That scared me more than shaking. I set my phone on the table, flat, like it was evidence that needed a clean surface. Lena leaned in over my shoulder. Open it, she said. Don't narrate it. Just watch. I tapped the alert. The thumbnail loaded slow gray, then shapes, then the front porch I'd walked across 1,000 times without thinking. The time code burned in the corner like a brand. 11:336 that 19 a.m. And there he was. Evan. Standing at our door like he belonged there, which he did, technically, because we'd built a whole life around giving him keys. He wasn't alone. 2 men stood behind him, half out of frame like they wanted to be invisible. One carried a laptop bag, black, square, businesslike. The other held a small, hard case the size of a lunchbox, matte black, with a handle like a toolkit. My mouth went dry. Evan lifted his hand and knocked once, casual, like he was bringing home groceries instead of whatever this was. Then he glanced up, right at the camera. Not surprised. Not guilty. Entitled. He took a key out, slid it into the lock, and opened the door like he'd done it 1,000 times. The second man stepped closer, and I caught a flash of something metallic in the hard case clips. Maybe, or bits. Evan paused in the doorway. He looked up again, straight at the lens, and reached toward it. The feed went black. Ennist. Shestin thridiset. Ena instiridiset. Signal lost. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Lena's voice came quiet. Okay, she said, like she was talking to a panicking animal. That's not a normal husband checking on his wife. He cut the camera, I whispered. Or disabled the Wi-Fi, she corrected. Either way, that's intent. My throat tightened. He knows I'm not home. And he's acting like he's fine with that, Lena said. Which means he's not there for you. He's there for the house. For the router. For the devices. For the place that IT Audit had just named out loud on record. My home address. A residential router registered to the place that was supposed to be safe. The phrase "don't go home" replayed in my head, but now it wasn't a warning from a doctor. It was a command from physics. Don't step into a room where someone else controls the locks. I need my passport, I said suddenly. My paycheck stubs. My voice snagged on the stupid small things. My dad's ring. It's in the top drawer. Lena didn't flinch. "We can get essentials," she said. "But you're not going in alone." "I'm not going in," I snapped, then softened because she wasn't the enemy. I can't lose everything." "You won't," she said, and her tone turned into paper. "We do it clean. We do it on camera. We do it with witnesses." "Police?" I asked. "Yes," she said, and for the first time all day, her certainty felt like a handrail. "We go to the desk, we file a report, we get an incident number. Then, if we have to approach the property, we do it as part of documented safety." My phone buzzed again, Evan. "Of course." "Evan, why aren't you answering? I'm at home. We need to talk." "Home." He said it like a claim. Lena pointed at my screen. "Do not engage," she said. "Not yet." End quote. I looked at the dead black doorbell feed again, and something in my chest tightened into a hard knot. "What if he takes my laptop?" I asked. "My work stuff." "If he takes anything, that becomes part of the record," Lena said, "and we already have timecode proof he entered the property with 2 unknown men. That's your leverage." Leverage. Evidence. The words that had replaced love in less than 24 hours. We left the hospital lot in Lena's car because mine felt compromised like a thing Evan could find, track, disable. I watched the road signs with a strange calm and checked the dashboard time twice without meaning to. Shardinling Jofen. Again, 12:09. Lena drove like she was making a point. Turn signals, speed limit, no room for a traffic stop to become another humiliation. At the police desk, the lobby was bright and bland, posters about community safety, a bowl of peppermints, a woman at the counter with tired eyes and a badge clipped to her collar. Lena did the talking at first, tight, factual, no adjectives. "My friend has documentation of unauthorized access tied to her husband's contractor credentials," she said. "There is doorbell footage of him entering the shared residence with 2 unknown males and disabling the camera. We are requesting to file an incident report." The officer's eyebrows lifted. "Do you feel unsafe right now?" I swallowed. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. "Yes," I said, "and I've been told not to go home." "By who?" she asked. "An ER physician," I said, "because of evidence integrity, and because my husband's access appears in my medical record." The officer's mouth tightened in a way that said she didn't love hearing that. "Okay," she said. "Let's start with your name and address." "Address." Again. I gave it. Hearing it out loud made my skin crawl. She typed. Keys clacked. A printer word. She slid a form toward me. "Write down what happened in your own words," she said. "Include times if you have them." Times. I had times. I wrote 2:14 a.m. so hard the pen almost tore the paper. I wrote 11:36 and 19 seconds a.m. from the doorbell clip. I wrote signal lost 11:36 and 41 seconds a.m. I checked the wall clock twice while I wrote, like my body needed to keep proving that minutes were still real. Shard and Senchayifen. Again, 12:31. When I finished, the officer stamped the top corner and gave me a number. "Here's your incident report," she said. "Keep this. If you need officers to accompany you to retrieve personal items, this helps." An incident number. A paper anchor. Lena took a photo of it immediately. Then she looked at me. "Essentials," she said. "Fast. In and out. If anything looks off, we leave." My stomach flipped. "We're really doing this. We're doing it like witnesses," she corrected. We drove toward my apartment with the windows up and the radio off. The closer we got, the more my body tried to crawl out of my skin. The hallway outside my unit was too quiet. Daylight poured in through the stairwell window, harsh and clean, like it wanted to expose everything. My doormat was crooked. Not by much, just enough to tell me somebody's shoe had caught it and not cared. Lena held up her phone. "Recording," she whispered. I stared at my door. The deadbolt looked normal. The chain inside, visible through the small gap where the door met the frame, hung at a slightly wrong angle, like it had been latched and then forced. My throat tightened. Then I saw the latch. Tiny scratch marks around the strike plate. Fresh, silver against paint. Evan had fixed our locks last month. He'd laughed about it. "You worry too much, Maya. I've got it." My skin went cold. I didn't reach for my key. I didn't touch the knob. I just stood there, staring, while my brain built the new truth in clean, brutal columns. He still had access. He'd brought tools. He'd disabled the camera. And if I stepped inside without control, I wasn't just risking my safety. I was walking into his version of the story. Lena's voice came low. "We're not going in," she said. I didn't argue. I couldn't. My phone buzzed once more, and I didn't even have to look to know who it was. Because some men don't need to stand in front of you to block the door. They just need you to believe it's still your home. We left my hallway the way you leave a fire backward, eyes open, not letting yourself believe it's already out. In the stairwell, my phone finally stopped buzzing like it was proud of itself and went quiet. That silence was worse. Quiet meant Evan was doing something that didn't require my reaction. In Lena's car, she kept recording until we were 2 blocks away. Only then did she lower her phone and exhale like she'd been holding her breath since the doorbell feed cut. "You're not going back there today," she said. "I know," I whispered, even though my body still wanted to argue with the word home like it was negotiable. We drove back toward the hospital because there were only 2 places on Earth that had more cameras than my apartment hallway: a police station and a county ER. And I needed my life documented like a chain of custody. In the hospital parking lot under that single streetlight, Lena parked so the light hit the windshield full on, no shadows, no hiding. It made the inside of the car feel exposed in a way that was almost calming. "I'm going to ask Patel for a statement," she said, already dialing. "Will he do that?" My voice came out too small. "He already documented what he saw," Lena said. "We're just making it portable." I once said. While she talked, I checked my phone settings with fingers that didn't feel like mine and found the thing Evan had insisted was, for safety. Location sharing, on. My stomach turned. Of course it was on. Of course he'd framed it as love. I tapped it off. The toggle slid gray like a door clicking shut. My throat loosened a fraction, like my body understood boundaries even when my heart didn't. A second later, my screen lit up with an email. From Evan H. Subject, Re. Compliance. Your access. I stared at his name at the top of a formal email thread like it was a joke nobody else was laughing at. I opened it anyway, because paper is what he'd used to trap me and paper was what I was going to use to pry the trap apart. Maya, compliance contacted me because I'm assigned to the clinic system this week. They're concerned about activity tied to your login. Don't make this worse. I can talk to them and clear it up if you stop panicking. Evan, stop panicking. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. He didn't deny anything. He didn't ask what happened. He positioned himself as the translator between me and the system, like he'd always done when the world got complicated. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. "Evan, why did your location stop sharing?" My blood went cold. Not because he'd noticed immediately. Lena ended her call and glanced at my screen. "He's tracking the tracking," she said, voice flat. "That tells you everything." "What if he already—" I started and didn't finish the sentence because I didn't want to give it words. Lena nodded anyway. "Yeah." She pulled up the incident report photo from earlier, my new anchor, and texted it to herself again, like redundancy was a prayer. Then her phone rang. She answered on speaker. "Lena." Dr. Patel's voice came through, clipped as ever. "I have 5 minutes." "Doctor," Lena said, "we need a written statement for law enforcement." You witnessed an edit trail in her chart that was not authored by clinical staff. A pause. "I can state what I observed," he said. "I cannot share protected audit logs." "We don't need logs," Lena said. "We need your observation placed in writing with date and time." Another pause, shorter. "Meet me at the staff side entrance in 10. We moved fast. Lena drove the loop around the building to a side door I'd never used. No waiting room, no triage window, no eyes. The air back there smelled like dumpsters and disinfectant. Dr. Patel came out with a folder tucked under his arm. He looked tired in a way that wasn't soft, like tired was just another policy requirement. He held out a single-page document and a pen. "This is what I can sign," he said. I took it with careful fingers, like it might tear. The statement was simple, brutal in its simplicity. Date, time of my ER visit. Observation. Chart contained an edit trail to Warman. Observation. Edit did not originate from clinical staff accounts. Observation. Contractor credential name displayed as Evan H. Recommendation. Patient advised not to return home due to safety and evidence integrity concerns. My eyes snagged on the last line. He had put it on paper. He had turned my fear into a documented recommendation. I looked up. "Thank you," I said, and my voice sounded wrong in my own ears, too polite for what he'd just confirmed. Dr. Patel's gaze held mine. "I'm not doing you a favor," he said. "I'm correcting a record." Then he glanced past me toward the parking lot, like he understood that parking lots weren't neutral anymore. "Has he contacted you?" he asked. "My husband?" I swallowed. "Yes." "Do not meet him alone," Dr. Patel said, and the rigidity in his voice sharpened. "And if compliance interviews you again, you say one sentence: 'I want the audit trail preserved.' That's it." Lena tucked the signed statement into her binder packet like it was a spine. "We're building a chain," she said. Dr. Patel nodded once and went back inside without looking over his shoulder. In the car, Lena spread our documents across her dashboard like a war map compliance email. Subject line, Incident Receipt Number EP241187. My blurred screenshot photo with the one dark line, the doorbell timecode clip, and now, Dr. Patel's signed statement. "Next," she said, "we give this to the right people." "The police?" I asked. "And hospital security," she said. "Because your husband uses badges and doors the way other men use fists." My phone vibrated again. "Marcy, Evan says you're lying. Fix this before it gets ugly." I didn't answer. Lena did something I didn't expect. She smiled, small and mean. "Let it get ugly," she said. "Ugly is public. Public has witnesses." She opened the compliance email thread again and forwarded it to a new address she'd gotten from a friend, someone in hospital administration, who owed her a favor. Then she attached Dr. Patel's statement and wrote, in plain language, "Preserve audit logs. Contractor credential Evan H. Attached. Physician statement plus incident receipt EP241187 plus doorbell time code. Paper first. Feelings later." I checked the time on the dashboard twice, out of habit and out of desperation. Again, 1:14. Lena's phone pinged with a reply almost immediately. "Admin. Security supervisor can meet you at vendor entrance before shift change. Bring everything." Vendor entrance. Shift change. Public. My skin prickled, not with fear this time, anticipation. Because if Evan thought he could keep controlling doors and systems, he was about to find out what happened when the system started watching him back. Lena zipped the binder closed like a verdict. "Okay," she said, "we're not chasing him." She looked at me. "Steady. We're letting him walk into the light." By the time we circled back to the hospital, the sky had that late afternoon gray that makes everything feel unfinished. Lena drove like she was delivering a package that couldn't be dropped. We parked in the lot behind the building under one streetlight that made the asphalt look chalky and honest. No shadows, no hiding. I sat there for a second with the binder on my knees, feeling the weight of paper that had replaced the weight of trust. I checked the time on the dash twice. Leodenschebafen. Again, 6:18. "Vendor entrance is on the east side," Lena said. "They picked it on purpose. Contractors funnel through there at shift change." My stomach tightened at the word contractors like it was his name in disguise. Inside, we followed the signs past the public lobby and into the back corridors where the walls turned beige and the doors turned heavy. The air smelled like laundry carts and hot plastic. A narrow hallway opened into a bank of badge scanners and waist-high turnstiles, metal arms, red lights, and a camera domed in the ceiling like an unblinking eye. Shift change was already spilling through. Scrubs in every color, clipboards, coffee cups, people moving with that tired purpose look, half talking, half walking, half living, and that was the point. Public had witnesses. A man in a navy blazer stepped toward us from the side, a radio clipped to his belt, broad shoulders, calm eyes, the kind of calm that comes from being around chaos without absorbing it. "You Maya Rivera?" he asked. "Yes, I'm Omar, security supervisor." He glanced at Lena's binder, then at me, like he was measuring how fragile I was and deciding not to treat me that way. "Admin said you had documentation." Lena opened the binder with the practiced snap of someone who'd done this before. "We do," she said. "We want audit trails preserved, and we want security logs pulled before anything gets overwritten." Omar nodded once. "We already put a hold on relevant footage." My breath released in a thin line I didn't realize I'd been holding. Omar gestured toward a small stand-up desk against the wall, monitor, keyboard, and a printer that looked older than the building. "We can't hand out everything," he said, "but I can show you what our access control system shows. I stepped closer, my body moving on instinct. Systems were the only language I trusted right now. Omar clicked through screens fast. Names, badges, timestamps, door IDs. My eyes snapped to the columns like they were oxygen. Contractor badges are in this list, he said. If you have a name. Lena didn't hesitate. Evan H. Omar typed it. My throat tightened as the screen populated. A line appeared. Then another. Evan H. Contractor active. Badge ID. Entry points. A scrolling history that looked like a heartbeat. Omar's jaw flexed slightly. He's been scanning in and out all week, he said. Normal for contractors. But look at the times, Lena said, voice low. Omar stopped scrolling. There it was, right in the middle of the list. 2:14 a.m. Access granted Clinic Wing B service door. My stomach dropped so hard I felt it in my knees. I leaned in until I could see the screen clearly. That's last night, I whispered. Omar glanced at me. You were in the ER around then? Yes, I said, and my voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else, and my chart shows an edit at 2:14. Omar exhaled slowly. Okay, he said, and the word carried a shift. Less neutral. More serious. That's not a public entry point. That's a service door. Restricted after hours. Lena pointed with her pen without touching the screen. Can you print that? Omar hesitated, then clicked. I can print the access log for his badge swipes tied to specific doors. That's security data. The printer whined. Paper slid out, black text on white, timestamps crisp enough to cut. Omar ripped the page off and placed it face down on the desk like it was hot. Chain of custody matters, he said. Lena's smile was tight. We agree. Omar's radio crackled softly. He lifted it, listened, then lowered it again. His eyes scanned the stream of people coming through the turnstiles like he was waiting for a specific face. Shift change means he'll likely come through here, Omar said. If he's on site. If he's not, I said, and hated the tremor in my voice. He'll say he wasn't. Omar looked at me for half a beat. Then we document what we can. He turned slightly, angling his body so he could see the entrance and the badge scanners at the same time. Stay to the side. Let him approach the turnstiles. Don't engage. Don't engage. The same instruction, different uniform. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't pull it out, but my skin crawled anyway. Lena glanced at me like she could hear the vibration. Not now, she mouthed. I checked the time on my phone screen without unlocking it, just the lock screen glow. Load in Censure Senfen. Again, 6:33. Then the crowd shifted, like a current changing direction. I saw him before my brain admitted it. Evan moved through the hallway like he owned the air. Blazer, perfect hair, contractor badge, lanyard hanging clean against his chest like a badge was a halo. He smiled at a nurse as he passed, charming, easy, and she smiled back like he was harmless. My stomach turned. He spotted me near the wall, and his smile didn't drop. It adjusted. Concern layered over control. Maya, he called, loud enough to sound caring, and loud enough to make sure people heard. There you are. Lena stepped half in front of me without touching me, like a shield that didn't look like one. Evan kept walking, eyes locked on me. Why aren't you answering your phone? He asked, voice warm, practiced. I've been worried sick. Worried. The soft leash. Talk to her counsel, Lena said evenly. Evan's smile flickered. Counsel? He laughed once, like the idea was absurd. Babe, this is a misunderstanding. Compliance already called me. I can fix it. Omar stepped forward, calm and solid. Sir, he said, hold up a second. Evan's gaze snapped to Omar's uniform, then to the radio, then back to me. The entitlement in his eyes sharpened. I'm on contract, he said. I have access. Not right now, Omar replied, and nodded toward the turnstile. Scan in. Evan's jaw tightened, but he played along, like he was humoring a rule. He stepped to the badge scanner and tapped his badge. A red light blinked. Beep. Denied. For 1 second, Evan's face went blank, pure surprise, like gravity had betrayed him. Then it filled back in with anger so fast it almost looked like a smile. That's a glitch, he said immediately. My badge works. Omar didn't move. Scan again. Evan scanned again. Red light. Beep. Denied. The hallway seemed to pause around the sound. A nurse behind him slowed. 2 techs glanced over. Someone whispered, Is that a contractor? Like it was entertainment. Evan's gaze flashed to me sharp now, not warm. "What did you do?" he hissed under his breath. "Just for me." I didn't answer. I let silence be a boundary, not a surrender. Lena spoke instead, calm as a filing cabinet. "We preserved records," she said. "That's all." Evan's hand tightened on his badge lanyard. He turned to Omar, voice rising just a notch, authority trying to reassert itself. "Call it. Call compliance. I need to get through." Omar raised his radio. "Already done," he said. And then, from the far end of the corridor, a man in plain clothes appeared, no scrubs, no badge on a lanyard. He walked with purpose and held a thick envelope in his hand, like it belonged to a courtroom. Omar's posture shifted, just slightly, like a door locking. The man approached, eyes on Evan. "Evan H?" he asked. Evan's chin lifted. "Yes." "Who are you?" The man flipped open a leather wallet and showed a badge, quick, practiced. "Detective Reyes," he said. "I have a warrant." Evan's smile finally broke. And in the space between one beep and the next, the whole hallway seemed to inhale, because everyone understood what a warrant meant, even if they didn't understand why. Detective Reyes didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The word warrant did the work for him. Evan's face tightened into something that tried to be amused. "This is ridiculous," he said, loud enough for the hallway to hear, like volume could turn procedure into a misunderstanding. "I'm a contractor. I work here." Reyes held the envelope up and looked at him like he was reading a barcode. "Evan H., he repeated. "You are being served a warrant related to unauthorized access and modification of protected health information and related fraud activity." The hallway sound thinned. The shift change chatter dropped into a hush that still had breath in it. People slowed near the turnstiles. A nurse with a coffee stopped mid-step. Someone's badge beeped behind us, and the normal sound felt wrong inside the new one. Evan's eyes flicked to me fast, sharp, then to Lena, then back to Reyes. "This is because she's spiraling," he said, and the kindness in his voice was so fake it almost sounded like contempt. "She's been stressed. She thinks everything's about her." End quote. End quote. Lena didn't move. "Talk to the detective," she said. "Not her." Evan ignored her. He stepped half a pace toward me, like he could still claim the space between us. "Maya," he said softly, switching to the voice that always made people believe he was the reasonable one. Tell them you're fine." I didn't answer. I didn't blink. I let silence be what it had become, a boundary line you could hear. Omar stepped in, solid. "Sir," he said, "hands where I can see them." I round. Evan's mouth twitched. "Are you kidding?" Reyes nodded once to someone behind him, and a second uniformed officer appeared like he'd been there the whole time, and we just hadn't earned the right to notice him yet. Reyes opened the envelope and pulled out a few sheets printed, clipped, official. He didn't wave them. He didn't dramatize them. He simply turned one page toward Evan, as if Evan might want to read the name that was already his. "This includes a request to preserve access logs, badge scans, and related footage," Reyes said. "Hospital security already provided preliminary confirmation of a restricted access entry at 2:14 a.m. My stomach clenched at the number even though I'd written it, screenshotted it, printed it, and carved it into my brain. Evan's jaw tightened so hard I saw the muscle jump. "That's not possible," he said quickly. My badge glitched. "It's been glitching." Omar didn't even look at him. He looked at Reyes. "It didn't glitch at 2:14, Omar said. "It granted access." That landed differently in public. In public, granted access sounded like guilt. Evan's eyes widened, not with fear yet, but with the shock of losing his favorite tool. Plausible explanation. A woman in a gray cardigan pushed through the crowd from the side corridor. Hollis. Compliance. Red tab folder clutched like a shield. Two people followed him, one with a tablet, one with a badge that read admin. Hollis's eyes snapped to me, then away, like I was a detail he didn't want to humanize. "Detective," Hollis said, already breathless from walking fast in polished shoes, "we can confirm the chart note in question was not authored by clinical staff accounts." Reyes didn't look surprised. "We're going to need that on record," he said. Hollis nodded, once grim, and then, because the hallway had turned into a courtroom without a judge, he spoke louder, not shouting, projecting. "For clarity," he said, "the hospital's preliminary review indicates Miss Rivera is not the author of the unauthorized edits." My vision tunneled for a second. Not because I was relieved, because I suddenly heard Tasha's voice from earlier check her bag before she bolts and felt with brutal clarity how easy it was for a room full of strangers to swallow an accusation and how hard it was to spit it back out. The crowd murmured. A nurse's eyebrows lifted. Someone whispered, "So it wasn't her?" Like my name was a headline. Evan's head snapped toward Hollis. "What are you saying?" he demanded, the warmth gone now. "You can't just—" Hollis didn't flinch. "We're saying the evidence points to contractor credential misuse," he replied, and then his eyes cut briefly to the lanyard at Evan's chest, including a device registration labeled EVANIT07. That did it. Evan's face emptied again, the same blank shock he'd had at the turnstile, like the system had betrayed him twice in one day, and he couldn't decide which betrayal hurt more. He laughed once, sharp and ugly. "This is insane," he said. "She set me up." Lena's voice stayed calm. "The logs set you up," she said. "You just walked into them." Reyes stepped closer. "Evan H., turn around," he said. Evan didn't. He tried one last move authority. "I want to speak to my supervisor," he said, chin lifted. "I want it here. This is a mistake." Reyes's tone didn't change. "You can speak to your attorney." Omar reached gently for Evan's elbow, not rough, not dramatic, just firm. Evan jerked away on reflex, and the crowd sucked in another shared breath like a single organism. "Don't touch me," Evan snapped, loud. That was the moment he forgot where he was. Because in a hallway full of cameras, volume becomes evidence. Reyes nodded to the officer. "Now," he said. The officer took Evan's wrists with practiced efficiency. The cuffs clicked metal on skin, final and real. Evan's mouth opened as if he could still negotiate his way out of physics. "Babe," he started, turning his head toward me. I didn't move. I didn't save him. I didn't even look away. I watched, because watching was what witnesses do. Hollis cleared his throat, as if he hated being part of the story but needed to close the loop. "Additionally," he said, Dr. Patel's clinical statement notes. This note was not written by clinical staff. Hearing Dr. Patel's line out loud in public, in front of uniforms, badges, scrubs, contractors, hit differently than hearing it in a curtained ER bay. It wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a record. Evan's eyes flashed with something that finally looked like fear. "Maya," he said again, quieter this time, and it sounded like he couldn't believe I wasn't stepping in. "Tell them." Action. I let my silence answer. Omar leaned toward Hollis. "Deactivate his access now," he said, low but audible. The admin with the tablet tapped fast. Evan's badge lanyard hung against his chest like a joke that had stopped being funny. A second later, the screen near the turnstile refreshed, and the status line beside his name shifted from active to revoked. Right there, in front of everyone. The hallway gave him what he'd tried to give me, a label. Revoked. Evan saw it and flinched like it was a slap. Reyes guided him forward, toward the side exit, toward the daylight that wasn't kind. "You're coming with us," he said. As they passed, a familiar face appeared near the edge of the crowd. Marcy. My mother-in-law stood frozen with her phone in her hand, lips pressed tight, eyes darting between Evan in cuffs and me standing still. Her reputation shield cracked quietly, the way glass does before it shatters. Tasha was there too, half behind the triage window, watching with a look that tried to be neutral and failed. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, and whatever she'd expected to see, panic, shame, pleading, wasn't there. I lifted my chin just slightly. Not triumph. Just proof. The officer steered Evan through the doorway, and the corridor noise came back in slow waves, people exhaling, people murmuring, people returning to their lives like my life hadn't just been relabeled in public. My phone was in my hand before I realized it. I hit record, not because I wanted drama, but because I wanted the beep and the click and the exact moment the system stopped belonging to him. On the video, you can hear it. Red light. Denied. Cuffs. A low, steady voice saying, "Warrant." And in the background, my own breathing quiet, controlled like someone who finally understood what Dr. Patel meant. Don't go home. Not until the doors stop answering to him. The next morning, I woke up in Lena's guest room with my phone face down on the nightstand like it could still betray me if it saw my expression. For a second, just a second, I forgot where I was. Then, my brain replayed the sound that had rewired my life. Beep. Denied. and the click of cuffs in a hallway that smelled like bleach and coffee. I sat up and checked the time on my lock screen. Lowdownling Tiefin. I checked it again out of habit, then stopped myself, like I was catching an old reflex before it finished its loop. In Lena's kitchen, the binder packet was still on the table, closed and thick, like it had a pulse. The red folder tab sat inside a clear baggie, now Lena's idea, labeled in black ink. Found employee ID label present. Coffee? Lena asked, already pouring. Yeah, I said, and my voice sounded like mine again, which felt unfamiliar. While the kettle heated, my email loaded. One subject line sat at the top like a weight I'd been carrying with my teeth. Hospital compliance. Unauthorized chart edit MRN. Update. My thumb hovered. My stomach tightened. Even after the warrant, even after the hallway, my body still expected the system to turn on me. I opened it. The message was short, sterile, but the sentence in the middle made my eyes sting anyway. Preliminary review indicates you are not implicated in unauthorized access activity associated with EP 241187. Not implicated. Not a hug. Not an apology. But it was the first official sentence that didn't treat me like a question mark. Lena leaned over my shoulder and exhaled once. Okay, she said. That's a start. A second email came in, a beat later from HR this time. HR, administrative leave, rescinded, access restoration. I stared at those words, my chest loosening in tiny increments I could feel. Then my phone buzzed with a direct deposit notification. Rent was due tomorrow. The deposit landed anyway. Evan had siphoned in teaspoons, but he hadn't managed to cut off my paycheck before the system turned its eyes on him. I sank into the chair like my bones finally remembered they were allowed to rest. Lena slid a yellow legal pad toward me. List what you need today, she said. Essentials, boundaries, locks. Locks. My stomach tightened again, but this time it wasn't dread. It was resolve. We didn't go back to my apartment alone. We didn't go back quietly. We did it like witnesses. Lena called the non-emergency line and asked for a civil standby with my incident report number. The officer on the phone sounded bored until she heard the phrase hospital contractor and audit trail. We can meet you there at 10:30, she said. At 10:28, Lena and I were in the parking lot under that same single streetlight daylight now, but the light still mattered because it meant the camera above the pole had a clear angle. I checked the time once, not twice. The officer arrived, another one behind him, 2 uniforms, 2 sets of eyes. Witness pressure without humiliation. You're retrieving personal items only? The first officer asked. Yes, I said. Passport, documents, medication. Nothing else. He nodded. We'll stand by. The hallway outside my unit still felt wrong. The doormat was still crooked. The scratch marks around the strike plate still flashed silver against paint. I hated how my body wanted to apologize for noticing. We didn't use my key. We called a locksmith. He showed up in a white van with a company logo and a clipboard. Of course he had a clipboard. Everybody who mattered to me now had a clipboard. Name? He asked. Maya Rivera, I said. He glanced at the officers. Okay, he said, and his tone changed into procedure. You want rekey or full lock replacement? Replacement, Lena answered for me. The locksmith nodded like that was the only sane choice. Deadbolt and knob, he said. Give me 15. When the door finally opened, the air inside didn't smell like home. It smelled like disturbed dust, and something faintly metallic tools maybe, or my imagination making the world sharp. I walked in with the officers behind me and Lena filming, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. This wasn't a reunion. It was a retrieval. On my kitchen counter, my mail was stacked like nothing had happened. Grocery coupons, a flyer, and one envelope that didn't belong. White, stiff, embossed seal in the corner. Hospital compliance. My hands went cold. Lena saw it and didn't touch it. That's your evidence #6, she murmured, half joking and not joking at all. I picked it up carefully, like it might smear. At the table, with 2 officers within arm's reach and the locksmith swapping metal out of my door, I broke the seal. Inside was a single-page letter on official letterhead. It said the same thing as the email cleared, preliminary, pending formal closure, only this time it was ink on paper. It was a document I could put in a file folder and pull out when someone tried to rewrite my story later. At the bottom was a line that made my throat tighten. Contractor access associated with Evan H. has been revoked, pending criminal investigation. Revoked. On paper, I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just folded the letter once and slid it into Lena's binder like it was the missing page in a book that had been ripped out. We worked fast. Passport, medication, the ring my dad gave me, 2 pay stubs, my laptop. On the way out, I grabbed the parking validation ticket from my wallet, the one from the ER that had felt like a receipt I'd regret, and stared at it for half a second. Lena watched me. "Keep it?" she asked. "Not forever," I said. The locksmith handed me a small set of new keys on a plain metal ring. "Old ones won't work," he said. I stared at the keys like they were heavier than they should be. Then I nodded. Outside, in the daylight, the apartment building looked exactly the same. But when the new deadbolt clicked, the sound didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like an end to a sentence Evan had been writing for years. That night, I didn't sleep the way I used to. One ear tuned for keys in the lock, one eye on my phone screen like it could warn me before something happened. I slept like a person who had already done the warning part. Lena's couch had been temporary. My apartment was still mine on paper, but paper had been Evan's favorite weapon, so I didn't let paper decide my body's safety. I waited until the locksmith's receipt was in my hand, until the officers had left, until Lena had filed the compliance letter into the binder like a final stamp. Then, at 6:12 a.m., I slid into my car, turned the seat warmers on, and placed my phone face down in the cup holder. That detail mattered more than it should have, because for the last year, I'd driven with my phone up, navigation open, shared location on, Evan's little blue dot hovering like a promise. Now the screen stayed dark. I started the engine and pulled out slow, deliberate, and took a route home he never chose. Not the highway ramp he preferred, not the shortcut past the gas station where he knew the guy, not the turn that always ended with him saying, "See, I told you, my way's faster." I took the long way through side streets where the traffic lights were polite and the morning looked ordinary. When I hit the first red light, my hand twitched toward my phone out of habit, toward the clock, toward proof. I didn't check it twice. I didn't check it at all. I just sat there and listened to the heater hum and the soft click-click of my blinker and my own breathing, steady and quiet. At the apartment building, the parking lot under the single streetlight looked the same as it always had: gray asphalt, faded lines, a few cars with frost on their windshields. In the dark, it had felt like a hiding place. In daylight, it was just a parking lot. Ordinary. I parked under that light anyway. Not because I needed it to feel safe, because I wanted it to stop feeling like a special location in my story. I stepped out and the air bit my cheeks. Somewhere upstairs, someone's alarm was going off. A dog barked. Life kept happening in the background like it hadn't been held hostage by one man's badge. In the hallway, the doormat was straight now, not because things were fixed, because Lena had nudged it with her foot yesterday like she couldn't stand one more crooked symbol. The new deadbolt looked clean, too shiny, like it didn't belong yet. My key slid in. The lock clicked. And when I pushed the door open, I felt something strange. Not relief exactly, but permission. Inside, I moved through the space like I was learning it again. Not as someone's wife. Not as a suspect. Not as a person trying to keep a man calm. As a person who lived here. In my kitchen, I set the new keys on the counter and stared at them for a beat. I'd always joked that Evan was the key guy. He liked being the one with access. He liked holding the power small, invisible, domestic. Now the keys were plain metal on a plain ring, and they were mine. I filled the kettle with water and set it on the stove. The sound was small and stupid and perfect water rushing into metal, the kind of sound you never notice until you've been living in adrenaline. While it heated, I opened the drawer where I kept junk. Rubber bands, batteries, old receipts. At the bottom was the parking validation ticket from the ER. Stamped, smudged, the blank space where the total should have been. The first physical proof that my night had changed shape. I held it between my fingers and felt. For a moment, the cold floor under my sneakers, the elevator mirror, the lobby buzz, Evan texting, "I'm outside," the strip of blurred ink that had started all of it. Then I folded the ticket once and dropped it into the trash. Not ceremonially, not dramatically. Just done. I reached into the clear baggie Lena had given me and pulled out the red folder tab. The one labeled with my employee ID. The one that had been a sliver in my chart folder before I even knew I was being tagged. I held it up to the light. It was just plastic. That was the point. That's what made it so insulting, how easy it was for someone to reduce me to a label. I snapped it in half with both hands. The plastic cracked with a dry little pop. Then I dropped the pieces into the trash on top of the parking ticket. The kettle clicked off. That soft click hit me harder than the cuffs had. In its own way, because cuffs were about him being stopped. The kettle was about me starting. I poured water into a mug and stood there in the quiet kitchen, steam rising, and let my phone stay face down on the counter. No buzzing. No dot. No soft leash. I walked to the front door and tested the lock twice, not because I didn't trust it, but because I was teaching my body a new rhythm. Click, solid, mine. I leaned my forehead against the wood for a second and exhaled. Doctor. Patel's voice floated through my head, flat, clinical, final. Don't go home. I understood now that he hadn't been talking about a building. He'd been talking about a story. And the story Evan had been editing quietly, confidently, with credentials and charm ended the second the system stopped answering to him. I turned from the door and looked back at my kitchen. Keys on the counter, steam fading from the mug, the trash can holding 2 small pieces of plastic and 1 stamped ticket, like a tiny grave for the version of me that thought love meant access. Then I sat down at my own table and made a grocery list. Soup, rice, coffee, nothing dramatic. Just a life that didn't need his permission.